Ford's rarest muscle car produced in the 80s, the phrase 1980s muscle cars is unlikely to get enthusiasts excited. After the glory years of the American muscle car of the 60s and early 70s, when giant V8s happily gobbled up gasoline, a couple of fuel crises put an end to the heroes of quarter-mile racing. Of course, there are a few bright spots. For example, 1979 marked the beginning of Fox-body Mustang production by Ford. Ford is one of the most recognizable automotive brands on the planet, having revolutionized the industry over the years with some incredible vehicles including the Mustang, GT40, Maverick, and many others. Although these Mustangs began their lives with comically weak engines, it was this decade that spawned Ford's Special Vehicle Operations (SVO) division. This led to the legendary Special Vehicle Team (SVT) and a number of iconic blue oval cars in the years that followed. However, only one of Ford's muscle cars can lay claim to being the rarest of all those built in the 1980s. Ford built just 10 M81 McLaren Mustangs in 1980. We're not talking about the muscle cars produced by Ford in the 1980s. Perhaps only the Mustang I elicits more looks of horror from car enthusiasts. However, it was this ill-fated car that Ford was targeting in the late 70s. In 1980, the Blue Oval wanted to bring some excitement back to the lineup, as well as revive the Ford Motorsports program. Although Ford was selling a 5.0-litre V8 in 1979, a second fuel crisis led to this engine being downsized to a 4.2-litre from 1980 to 1982. Because of this and the new emissions standards, the Detroit automaker had no choice but to look to the Lima inline-4 turbocharged 2, though Ford was selling a 5.0-litre V8 in 1979. The second fuel crisis saw that engine destroke to 4.2 litres from 1980 to 1982. Between this and new emissions regulations, the Detroit automaker had no choice but to look at its 2.3-litre turbocharged Lima inline-4. Turning to McLaren engines, which had a shop right around the corner in Livonia, Michigan, Ford cooked up something new: 0.3-litre engine. That something was the M81 McLaren Mustang, a Fox body car that looked like nothing else on the road, then and now. To achieve those goals of sprucing up their portfolio and going racing, Ford and McLaren teamed up to create a limited-volume Mustang that would compete in IMSA races. It consisted of a heavily revised version of the turbocharged Lima engine, truly wild IMSA-inspired styling, and a modified race-ready cabin. The plan was to build 250 of these M81s, named for the expected 1981 model year. However, with a price tag between $20,000 and $25,000 plus alleged issues with engine availability, only 10 M81 McLaren Mustangs were ever built. That makes it the rarest Ford muscle car of the 1980s, and right up there with some of the rarest cars Ford has ever built across its long history. Which is a shame, because the powertrain alone on the M81 Mustang was pre-M81 McLaren Mustang details too. 3-litre turbocharged inline-4 power, 175 horsepower, torque 145 pounds, featuring transmission 4-speed manual, 0 to 60 miles per hour 9.76 seconds, quarter mile 17.37 seconds at 79.2 miles per hour, production volume 10 units. D special at the time, Ford's standard turbocharged 2.3-litre inline-4 was rated for 132 horsepower. To make it a respectable racer, McLaren took the stock Lima engine apart, blueprinted, deburred, and polished it, then put it back together. Featuring a Garrett T3 turbo, the reinvigorated mill ran a 9.01 compression ratio and was now good for 175 horsepower, at least, according to an article in the December 1980 issue of Motor Trend. The variable boost pressure could perhaps be turned up to 12 psi and make around 190 horsepower. However, it was officially said to run on a maximum of 11 psi of boost, which was good for 175 horsepower and 145 pounds featuring of torque. This pressure could be adjusted with an in-cabin controller and, at 5 psi, the McLaren tuned engine was said to make about the same amount of power as the stock Lima turbo. In Motor Trend's hands, pressure was capped at 7 psi per the automaker's request as it was a «green» engine. At that level, the M81 ran the quarter mile in 17.37 seconds at 79.2 miles per hour and did the 0 to 60 run in 9.76 seconds. Now, these Mustangs did in fact race at Sebring and Daytona that year, so they required legitimate handling chops. To that end, Ford fitted adjustable Coney shocks and struts plus heavy-duty suspension components out of the period Fairmont police package, including sway bars, springs, a FAT 255 section width Firestone HPR rubber wrapped 15 inches by 8 inches BBS Marla wheels and larger 10.6 inches front brake rotors out of the Mustang GT were pressed into service. 9 inches drum brakes were used out back and a 4-speed manual sent power to those rear wheels, though a 5-speed was planned for production. Of course, the bulging bodywork added a healthy dose of wide-body stability to the equation as well. ND bushings. Outside, the 1980 M81 Mustang received a dramatic fiberglass hood with gaping heat extraction vents and a pair of pins to keep it in place. To accommodate the big wheel and tire package, steel fender flares were added that increased the front track by 3.5, and the rear by 2. Style points aside, this functional improvement was aimed at better stability and handling on the track. Other notable M81 giveaways are the active front and rear brake cooling ducts, the lack of a passenger side exterior mirror, and the gently curved rear glass lifted from the period Mercury Capri. The big Mustang block letters between the tail lights were another indication this was not a garden variety Ford muscle car. Of the 10 meters 81s Ford actually built, one was finished in white, another in black, and two in the dark blue shade of Enduro. The other 7 received the ironically named bittersweet orange paint job. Inside, all of these rare Fords came with a pair of cloth-covered Recaro LS buckets up front and a leather-wrapped 14 inches racemark steering wheel. A set of Stewart Warner gauges were fitted to the instrument panel and an Scar legal roll bar was bolted into place. All in all, the 1980 M81 Mustang McLaren was a truly special car, clearly ready for racing. To drive that point home, each of the 10 has a serialized brass plaque on the dashboard denoting where it fell in the production process. Collector's item, rarity and current value of the M81 today. The Ford Mustang McLaren M81 is a coveted collector's item. Its rarity, combined with its unique place in Mustang history, makes it highly desirable among Mustang enthusiasts. Prices for well-preserved models can range from $50,000 to over $100,000, depending on condition and mileage.